What's going on about this Afro think tank? Malian music legend cancels all his performances in South Africa in protest to the xenophobia happening in South Africa. And this should be embarrassing to South Africa. The fact that it's gotten to the xenophobia, this psyop from white supremacy within South Africa that's pushing and programming poor, disenfranchised South Africans to fight against other black people instead of fighting against the powers that be, which are the white Boers and Dutch and freaking colonizers that's making their lives a living hell. Right? Instead of doing that, they're pointing their fury towards other marginalized individuals who are being manipulated as buffer citizens and various other different mechanisms which white supremacy uses to control people, right? So, of course, it's having an effect because other African countries are now, boycotting, talking about sanctions, punishing South Africa. And for South Africa to be pushing, in one hand, Pan-Africanism and unity on the continent, the powers that be, which is the white supremacists within South Africa, are making sure to overshadow that by highlighting, promoting, pushing, and financing those xenophobia, march on march, Dudula, hateful individuals that are too stupid to realize they're fighting against their own sovereignty. They're fighting against their own freedom. They're fighting to maintain the disenfranchisement that they are complaining about in the first place. And that so far, for all the Africans who had to leave Africa, right, it has not produced any jobs for the South Africans. It has not benefited the South Africans at all. As a matter of fact, all it has done is created food deserts, created less convenience in their communities as these people were serving their communities, right? And the white people still control their country. So, until South Africa turns their energy on the people that they should be turning it on, like, those white folks who create the systems, or those Asians and Indians who come in the country. Now, I've seen in some cases that they were also targeting other foreigners. I've seen a few of them were targeting some European businesses, but these are all probably the Eastern Europeans or the Europeans that are not part of the rich Western class. You got various different Europeans. I see them going after other Asians and other businesses, but at the same time, they're going after businesses that are doing fair business, square business. A lot of these people they're attacking are in the country legally, right? And they're conducting business and providing services to their communities that the white people who they have no problem with are not providing in their community. You see what happens when a group of people are miseducated or uneducated or programmed by wealthy people? You see how powerful propaganda is? As soon as South Africa and Nigeria start to unite economically, as soon as all these African countries start to make proposals to connect their economies to make it so Africans can move about the continent more smoothly, all of a sudden we have this xenophobic movement popping out of nowhere. Same way in America, as they see, as soon as African Americans started to go into Ghana, started reconnecting with Ghana, starting to make real, actual connections that can't be disconnected by any propaganda white people make, all of a sudden we got FBA. You see, so white folks are deploying all of the mechanisms of propaganda control, including activating all of their snakes in the grass, all of their agents, all of their Coonarians, all of their black people who will throw other black people under the bus for just white validation and butter biscuits, right? There are plenty of weak black people in all of our collective communities that are, that will sell their own people out, right, for the validation of white men. We got Africans in America, right? We got Africans in America who will sell out all African Americans, for white people. They on the internet, they love white folks. We got different types of black people who will fight each other for the butter biscuits white people are passing out under the table, right? So it's a very complex issue, but we have to take a stand. And there's more of us than them. There's more pro-blacks than there are anti-pro-blacks. There are more black people who want black unity than there are who are too weak for unity and only want separation, right? So we have to fight against it, but we also have to protest and stop giving money to those Africans, stop making rich those African nations, groups, and individuals who deem to push disunity, just like that. So I commend this Malian artist for not participating in any events in South Africa. I encourage all artists not to participate in anything in South Africa. South Africa should not be able to enjoy the multiculturally rich experience of Africa, as far as entertainment, if they don't allow these same very Africans to be in their countries and participate in their economies. It's just like that. You can't love me one day, want my resources, but then shit on me the next day, right? While you have no smoke for the ones that shit on you every single hour of every single day. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
ATT News Network, Southern Africa. This is ATT News Network, Afro Think Tank News Network. Our third story takes us to South Africa, where one of Africa's legendary musicians has entered one of the continent's most difficult conversations. Malian music icon Salif Keïta has withdrawn from planned commercial performances in South Africa. His reason? Xenophobia. Keïta says he cannot ignore reports of hostility and violence directed toward fellow Africans living in South Africa. And his decision carries particular historical significance. This isn't an artist with no relationship to South Africa suddenly criticizing the country from afar. Keïta has long-standing connections to the struggle against apartheid and was among the international artists who lent their voices to the movement demanding freedom for Nelson Mandela. Decades later, he is challenging South Africa again, but this time over the treatment of other Africans. To understand this controversy, however, we have to understand the pressures underneath it. South Africa remains one of the continent's largest and most developed economies. That has made the country a destination for migrants seeking employment, security, and economic opportunity from countries including Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, Nigeria, and elsewhere. But South Africa itself struggles with severe unemployment, inequality, poverty, and pressure on public services. When jobs are scarce and communities are struggling, immigrants can become highly visible targets for public frustration. Some South Africans argue that undocumented immigration is poorly controlled and places additional pressure on employment, housing, healthcare, and other services. Those concerns deserve serious discussion. A country has the right to debate its immigration system. Citizens have the right to demand that immigration laws be enforced, and governments have an obligation to manage their borders. But there is a line between immigration policy and collective punishment. When an individual is attacked, threatened, excluded from essential services, or treated as an enemy simply because that person is Nigerian, Zimbabwean, Mozambican, Malawian, or another African nationality, the conversation is no longer simply about immigration enforcement. It becomes xenophobia. And that exposes a contradiction at the heart of modern Pan-Africanism. African leaders routinely speak about continental integration. The African Continental Free Trade Area seeks greater economic integration. The African Union promotes cooperation. Pan-Africanists speak about Africans sharing a common destiny. But economic integration ultimately requires people to interact across borders. Businesses need workers. Students travel. Entrepreneurs relocate. Tourists visit. Families migrate. Capital crosses borders. If goods and money are encouraged to move across Africa, while African people increasingly fear crossing those same borders, continental integration becomes much harder to achieve. And that brings us back to Salif Keïta. His protest forces Africans to confront an uncomfortable question. Can we seriously speak about African unity while continuing to see other Africans primarily as foreigners competing for what little we have? There is another side to this discussion. Pan-Africanism cannot mean eliminating borders tomorrow. It cannot mean governments ignoring undocumented immigration. And it cannot mean dismissing the economic frustrations of ordinary South Africans. Successful continental integration requires functioning immigration systems, economic development, security, and governments capable of enforcing laws fairly. The challenge is finding a way to protect those legitimate national interests without turning another African nationality into an enemy. That distinction may determine whether Pan-Africanism becomes a functioning political and economic project, or remains primarily an inspirational idea. Salif Keïta has canceled performances, but the controversy he has highlighted is much larger than music. It asks Africa to decide what African unity actually means when people begin crossing borders in search of opportunity. This is AT&T News Network, Afro Think Tank News Network. Learn something. Teach something.